She scrubbed floors in silence, unseen by those who walked past her every day. To them, she was just the cleaning lady, another face in the background. But one evening, a wealthy man stumbled upon her in a moment that revealed a hidden truth, one that could shatter stereotypes and expose the weight she carried alone. What he saw wasn't just about her. It was about a mother's fight for dignity and a society that often looks away. The question is, when her secret comes to light, will it bring compassion or judgment? By day, Maria blended into the background of a mansion that wasn't hers. She polished silverware until it shone, scrubbed marble floors until her hands ached, and moved through rooms filled with luxury she could never touch. To the family she worked for, she was quiet, dependable, invisible. But when her shift ended, she returned to a small apartment across town, where her world was anything but ordinary. Waiting for her was her daughter, her heart, her reason to keep going. Born with Down syndrome, the little girl depended on Maria for everything, and Maria carried that responsibility with quiet strength. Each morning, she tucked away her own exhaustion and put on a smile her daughter deserved. But life in their neighborhood wasn't forgiving, and whispers of judgment followed her wherever she went. Still, Maria believed she could endure it all, until one unexpected moment inside that mansion would bring her private battles into the harshest light. Because sometimes, the walls we clean hide secrets, and sometimes they expose truths we wish the world would never see. Maria thought she had mastered invisibility. In the mansion, she moved like a shadow, careful never to leave a trace. But one evening, everything changed. The millionaire employer, who rarely noticed her, returned home earlier than expected. He walked into the kitchen expecting perfection, and instead found Maria clutching her daughter in the corner, her eyes filled with terror. The little girl had wandered in after school, waiting quietly for her mother to finish work. Maria tried to hide her, fearing judgment, fearing the questions that always came when people saw her daughter's differences. But it was too late. His gaze had already locked on them. At first, his silence was worse than words. He looked at Maria as though she had trespassed in his world. Then came the sharp questions. Why is she here? What are you hiding? Each one cut deeper than the last, as if her love for her child was something shameful. Maria's hands trembled as she tried to explain, but her words faltered. She saw the familiar flicker in his eyes, disbelief, pity, and something colder, rooted in prejudice. He saw her not as a mother, but as a stereotype, a black cleaning lady overstepping her place. Then came the threats. He hinted at calling security, at reporting her to the agency. Maria's chest tightened. She couldn't lose this job, not with rent overdue, not with medical bills piling up. The walls seemed to close in, trapping her between survival and dignity. The millionaire's voice rose, echoing off the marble walls. But just as Maria braced for the worst, her daughter stepped forward. Her small voice broke the tension, asking a question so innocent it made the room fall silent. For a moment, even the wealthy man was caught off guard. And in that pause, Maria's heart raced. She knew this confrontation wasn't over. Something bigger was coming. Something that would test not just her patience, but her very right to be seen as human. Because when the powerful feel threatened by the powerless, the story never ends quietly. The argument erupted into something far larger than Maria ever imagined. The millionaire's voice thundered through the mansion, accusing her of deceit, of bringing problems into his perfect world. His words weren't just about her daughter, they cut at her very identity, reducing years of sacrifice into a cruel stereotype. Maria's daughter clung to her leg, frightened but brave. Maria tried to shield her, her heart pounding so loudly she thought it might give her away. She had faced whispers before, even insults on the street. But this was different. This was her livelihood, her dignity, her child's safety, all hanging. in the balance. The man stepped closer, towering over them, his face twisted with disdain. He demanded that Maria leave immediately, that she take her daughter and never return. The words hung in the air like a verdict, each syllable reminding Maria of the fragile line she walked every day, between survival and collapse. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. This wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about being seen, about her daughter being valued, about the truth of who they were beyond the label he had placed on them. And then, in the silence that followed his final command, her daughter did something unexpected. She stepped forward, looked him in the eye, and spoke words so pure, so disarming, that even he couldn't ignore them. For the first time, the man's expression faltered. Not anger, not pity, but something else. Maria held her breath. In that moment, everything could change, for better or for worse. The next words, the next decision, would determine not just her future, but the way this story would be remembered. Because sometimes the breaking point isn't destruction, it's revelation. Maria left the mansion that night with her daughters, hand tightly in hers. The millionaire had no final words, no apology, just silence that echoed louder than any insult. For Maria, it was more than the loss of a job. It was a reminder of how fragile dignity can feel when measured against power and prejudice. But as she walked through the night air, something shifted. Her daughter's small act of courage still rang in her ears, reminding her that worth is not given by wealth or status. It is born within, unshakable, even when the world refuses to see it. Maria knew their struggle was not unique. Mothers like her fight every day for their children to be respected, for their families to be seen as human, for their existence not to be reduced to labels. This story doesn't end neatly. Racism rarely does. But it leaves behind a truth too powerful to ignore. Discrimination doesn't just live in the shadows. It thrives in the open, in workplaces, in schools, in the quiet assumptions people make about others. Maria's pain is not just her own. It mirrors the pain of countless others whose voices are silenced, whose sacrifices go unseen. And the question remains, how many more lives must be dismissed before compassion replaces prejudice? Her story is not just a reminder. It's a challenge to look closer, to listen harder, and to refuse the comfort of silence. Because in the end, the real measure of humanity isn't in wealth or power or status. It's in the way we choose to see and stand with one another.